Firstly, it occurs to me, of course, that 2 days or a day ago marked my full first year as CEO of this authority. Normally in a situation like this, people would like to talk about the accomplishments and the milestones that they delivered during the time. However, you know that when the board made the decision to hire me a year ago, that they did not hire a spin doctor, they didn't hire a politician, they didn't hire a salesman, they hired an engineer and a manager, a person who's built these kind of turnkey systems around the world. And so, although we, I believe, have been successful in certain parts of our business during the year, we have also made some improvements to the associated organizations, engineering organizations, and so on. We have had many shortcomings as well, and I maybe wanted to reflect on some of them. Firstly, the shortcomings related to staffing issues. I believe the most important thing a manager must do is to hire qualified people and assemble the right core team around him to make an organization work. While we have seen some improvements, you know that there have not been many. Nearly 2 years ago, the board commissioned an organizational assessment, and that assessment concluded many things that I really agree with, and unfortunately, you know that they were not possible to implement. Oversight to ensure taxpayers' money is correctly spent, engineering oversight, risk management, outreach, and financial control functions. Now, as of very recently, however, things have begun to move. The Governor's Office has shown leadership in assisting us to be able to hire critical people. And just last week, I announced my number 20th member in the state team, Chris Ryan, who was around. I'm not sure if he's still here as my Chief of Staff. There he is. I'm glad to have him on board. And in front here this morning is Tim Baresh, who's been appointed as the Southern Californian Regional Director, and that only yesterday. So things are moving, and I'm happy to announce that. On the other hand, we have to move through the, call it, bureaucracy of the state to make these things happen. Regarding something that has been you heard a lot of today, communications and outreach, I have to make a few statements. I do not believe that nothing has been done during the last year, but we do also understand that not sufficient has been done. This is a huge task, and there's a lot to be still to be done. In many cases, we reach out often to communicate with certain communities. And some communities praise our efforts, while the communities that are just adjacent to them, being supported by the same teams, by the same people, in fact, are often very dissatisfied. But I think that's just the nature of the business we're in. This may, of course, be because while we reach out to certain people, we unfortunately do not tell the community members exactly what they want to hear. In fact, communications and outreach are not the equivalent of agreement and consensus, which is a lot more difficult. But then again, I must admit, although in many cases we reach out often, we do not communicate that clearly, and we know many instances where stakeholders and elected officials have not known the complete story, and we obviously have not done our job well enough. The topic is complex and not easy to comprehend for many people, and we recognize that. So often the authority is accused of failing to reach out properly regarding major decisions. However, I can tell you we will continue to do so, to reach out and to improve our outreach efforts. On the issue of ridership and forecasts, because this topic is so widely discussed by the naysayers and therefore by the press and by everybody, members of the legislature, I've obviously been wrestling with this topic throughout my 12 months here. Let me tell you where I stand. We have used, as many of you know, the ridership forecasts and studies thus far to develop the CEQA and NEPA environmental review process. In fact, I believe that work has been very solid, and I found no fault in that work. And in fact, you know too, that when you do that, when you do a CEQA NEPA environmental study, you are looking for the greatest or worst impacts, not for the least impacts. You're trying to minimize impacts, but you're trying to see what the impacts are going to be on the environment. On the other hand, derivatives of these figures have been used for business plans in the past, and quite clearly, when these business plans were discussed, this is where people started getting less satisfied with the figures. It is normal in the early progression of these types of rail projects or transportation projects that a business case is built on such early value predictions, and optimization of the models take place as time goes on. As we had not sought funding from the private sector until today, and it's not yet the time to do so, because we are not close enough to starting up an operation, we obviously used the figures that we had and did not refine the ridership studies to become investment-grade ridership studies. This work is now ongoing under the guidance of a well-respected international team of independent experts. The ridership peer review group has referred to them. And inputs from the latest studies will be incorporated into our business plans, which are due to the legislature, due to be published in October of this year. Some argue that we ought to halt the work while we wait for this to be done to get to an investment-grade ridership forecast. Unfortunately, I must say that is surely false. This is not the way it's done anywhere in the world, and ridership forecasts are just what they are, what they called forecasts. They're based on numbers and calculations and modeling, and for exactly that reason they often are criticized by opponents. But what I do believe we need to ensure is that we develop these processes as we move on. The main reason I feel very comfortable with the system, I've said it on many occasions, with our system in California, there are two main reasons. One, and you heard it to some extent from our Spanish colleagues today. Yes, a Californian high-speed rail system connecting Los Angeles and San Francisco will certainly make money. Every single high-speed rail system in the world operates in black. That means it generates cash when it comes to fare box income covering the cost of operations. Every single one, and that's not according to myself, the authority, or it is according to the International Union of Railways, the UIC, or UNIFE as well, who are the coordinators of these type of informations worldwide. What's more, the population densities in California are far greater than those in successful systems in other parts of the world, meaning that we have a great future to look forward to. The second reason we should be looking and continuing with our work is from a public policy point of view. The state ought not to consider only whether a dollar spent is equal to or greater than a dollar earned. From a public policy point of view, we can and should consider other tremendous benefits that high-speed rail bring and will bring, such as long-term economic strength, such as near-term job creation, environmental benefits, reduced accidents, improved air quality, reduced impacts on agriculture, and such like. You heard quite a few such statements today. We will be working to prepare our business plan, which will incorporate all such issues when we deliver it in October. On the issue of challenges ahead for the high-speed rail project, there have been a lot of voices outlining the challenges and deficiencies, because pointing out difficulties is a fairly easy thing to do. Overcoming them is the real test. I believe we all agree that some of the real major challenges that we have on high-speed rail is, number one, funding. We know that. I've never hidden from that. And secondly, of course, choosing the correct business model and the correct investment to also attract private investment. On the funding, we know, and we're working with the FRA and DOT to get a better commitment from them, because we do have Prop 1A monies, and we now need a stronger commitment from the central government. With $9 billion here in California and already $3.9 billion committed by the central or federal government, I think we have a good start to the project. As far as the future, I think we have achieved some things during this year, but clearly we have a lot still to do. I still believe, as I move through the state and meet many people, there are many, many more people in our state, in many people also in the legislature and stakeholders in various regions throughout the state that understand these real challenges and have started to understand the real challenges that lie ahead to make this a reality. And I do hope that with this common understanding of the challenges, we can unite together to overcome the challenges and to make sure that we can make this project come to fruition. Because, of course, this is the California way. Each one of you, in particular, if I look at these board members, has been in California for many more years than I have. Although I can boast 7 years as a Californian myself, and by the way, I've paid taxes in California for 13 years. Even when I was out of the state, I was paying Californian taxes. And therefore, I can say I have all my children based here too, so they are other taxpayers and so on. So we can call this home as well. But even in my relatively short time compared to you here in California, I've come to realize in the Californian spirit, which is greater, which is bolder, which is more visionary than anywhere else I've been in the world, that we can make this happen. Unfortunately, I'm going to go to a few more little detailed things because I'd owe it to you as the board and the public to tell you about a few more detailed things. I have mentioned to you Chris Ryan and Tim Baresh that we brought on for the public as well. We are searching at the moment for more people. So if you know some real good people, we're looking for Chief Program Director, Chief Counsel, Chief Financial Officer, Regional Director, External Affairs. I'd like to make a comment on the LAO report because it would be wrong at the board not to make a comment about the LAO's report. On receipt of the LAO's report, there was much press, which was obviously viewed to be negative press because the press often repeats what's in reports. As the LAO had portrayed the authority as being relatively incompetent and that its major decisions, such as the selection of the initial construction section, as being politically motivated and incorrect, and that the structure of its board is incorrect and within this phase of the project. The LAO recommended that the authority be placed within Caltrans, and that the FRA be approached to renegotiate the terms of the funding agreements, so as to allow the spending of federal dollars first and to allow for the delay of the use of the ARIF dollars. The DOT, or FRA, as you know, were here on May the 16th and 17th in our offices, and they also sent us a letter on May the 25th in which they rejected the possibility to be able or willing to renegotiate the terms of the funding agreements. Furthermore, the DOT continued to confirm their decision, or our decision, as well as the decision that had been made with respect to the initial construction section being in the Central Valley, and that being correct.